Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation, and today I've got a special guest, Armando Venditti. How are you, mate?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Fantastic, fantastic. And today we are here to talk about one of the truly great albums of all time, Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street. Pretty
Hmm.
daunting task,
My
and
copy here.
absolutely. So the task is we're just going to talk about our favorite songs on the album.
Mhm.
Initially, we were thinking of five, then it's gone to 10. So it's just a free form chat. Might even go beyond 10, and we'll just go over the album. So take it away, Armando. First song.
Thank you. Well, first of all, just a bit of background on the album. It was released, excuse me, in 1972, um, in a stream of successful albums. That for the Rolling Stones, this was their what some people would call their heyday, their hot streak.
Yes.
Starting with Beggar's Banquet, and then there was Sticky Fingers, and then Exile, and then um, Goat's Head Soup. So this was released again in 1972, double album, 18 songs on Rolling Stones Records, distributed by Atlantic. So yeah, and it's pretty much a hodgepodge of styles. So my first one, I mean, there's really no order here, but my first song that I like off it is Rocks Off, and it kicks off the album. And just the opening guitar, like, and then you hear that comes in, and then you hear Mick say, "Oh yeah," how it just like, you just want to get into it, right?
Yes.
Um, and yeah, I don't want to, when I say typical, I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm just saying this is your straightforward, feet on the floor rocker, from the Stones. And yeah, and it's got to be said too, none of these songs are overly long in terms of like, like composition. They're
Mm.
mostly in the 2 to 3 minute range, somehow like in the five. But yeah, that's my first selection. Rocks Off.
Well, I've chosen the same song. I think it's one of the all-time great album openers from the Rolling Stones. I love Jagger's leering, slurring vocals. He's very mixed, very low in the song, but it's just perfect. It's loose, it's gritty, it's kind of raw. And when the
Mhm.
horns come in, oh, you get a shiver up your spine.
Yeah.
Nicky Hopkins on the piano, Armando, I love it. I think it's one of the truly great Rolling Stones openers. And when just put the needle in the groove and, pow, you're in for a classic
Well,
Rolling Stones album.
yeah, like right from the get-go, right from the first guitar like that comes in, that you're off and running with a good
Yeah.
track, right? And it has because it was recorded, parts of it were recorded. It's also got to be noted that this was during their when they were exiles, tax
Yes, at
exile
the Villa Nicote in the south of
in
France, in the
in
basement.
France,
So
yes,
it was
in
um,
France.
Keith Richards rented villa, and a lot
Yeah.
of it was just recorded in the basement. A lot of
Mhm.
shenanigans, a lot of drug use,
Yes,
a
yes.
lot of wild stories.
These sessions could be referred to as their extended longest weekend, that
Yeah,
lasted like 3 years, that kind of a thing.
yeah.
So
But the
yeah,
creativity out of this era was just phenomenal. I mean, it's my favorite era of the Rolling Stones, and
yeah, yes, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no,
This album, yeah, it's overall the songs have a very relaxed feel to them.
mm,
I mean, we'll go into it more with our
yeah,
selections, but I mean, they were at a point where, I mean, every rock group at this point was doing a double album at some point in their discography, in their catalog. You had the Beatles in 1968 with the White Album,
yes,
um, and yeah, this, I mean, it has again has a very relaxed feel to it in terms of the recording process. So yeah, it's a really good album. I like this one, and I like Sticky Fingers.
Yeah, that's another masterpiece. I like Let It Bleed, and yeah, no, I just love this era. I think it's just classic. I find the Stones, I call them as the perfect imperfect band because they are so loose. They're a feel, they're instinctive. And I think I've seen them once, and I can just see there's just so much mental telepathy with the members. They know when to come in. They know when to, when Charlie's got to come in. Keith knows when to, put a chord in this place, but it's loose. I think they're just one of the greatest perfect imperfect bands because nothing's, structured and metronomic. It's loose. It's feel. And that's what music's all about. And it's just joyful.
Yeah, I call it structured freeform.
Perfect imperfect.
It's a dichotomy, it's structured, but yet not, right?
Loose,
but loose,
not.
Structured and loose.
Yeah.
That's good. And I've seen them 3 times in concert. So over the years, but we'll move on. My next selection is Sweet Virginia.
Okay.
And what I like about it, again, it just seems like they were sitting around the living room, the machine's on, they've got their mics up, they're just on the couch having it, again, it was the times, smoking a joint and, and just having, it has a very relaxed, casual feel about the whole arrangement of the track. And very party atmosphere in terms of the kind of like the gang kind of vocals to it. Pardon me for the phone ringing.
That's all right.
This house has no phones ringing all day long. When this happens, then the phones start ringing. But yeah, the vocals on that track, again, very sort of like the group vocals that come in.
Yep.
It's like everyone. It's almost like they could sort of like motioning to everyone, like gather around the microphones and let's just just come in whenever you want, just come in, right, like, and just let's just have a good time with this track. So yeah, that's my second choice.
No, that's great. And Graham Parsons was very much a muse on that song. Really? If you read on the history of the making this album, Graham Parsons is everyone. He was like a most valuable player, but behind the scenes, he was kind of a big inspiration on this album. More about that. I'll talk about that later, but I like that song a lot.
Yeah.
I've selected Shaky Hips. I really like that triplet drumming of Charlie. It reminds me of a bit like ZZ Top Lagrange.
I was going to say that. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
I don't know the sort of in the date order, but yeah, it's got a bluesy call and response between Jagger and the horns. I love the finger picking guitar, and it's just got a nice retro feel. It's a lot of this is got a bit of a 50s feel. I mean, this whole album is like the history of American rock, blues, country, bluegrass, gospel. It's just the American album, and it's just all of their influence pouring out into the tracks of this album. And Shaky Hips is just a lovely little 50s throwback rocker. I really like it. It was actually written by a Louisiana bluesman called Slim Harpo. So it's not one of the originals. It's a cover.
That's right. And well, I mean, yeah, and the Stones were famous for doing covers on their albums. I mean, every once in a while, and
doing good covers.
Doing good covers. I mean, that's the sign of a good cover is if you can take it and make it your own.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I mean, if you're just going to go by the numbers and recreate the production from the original, just go back and listen to the original. Really, I mean, that's as P. Pardo would say, more on that later. Actually, my third choice is the single "Tumbling Dice."
Lovely.
I mean, it was one of the two singles that were released in North America. I'm not sure how many were released in Australia, but this was one of the singles. And Happy was the second single, which had Keith Richards on vocals. Yeah, in terms of the song, I mean, what can be really said about it? I mean, it was just a really, they were really tight on this track in terms of the arrangement and how they all played and played off one another. That's another thing. It's like they tended to play off one another.
Yes.
In terms of when to come in and what would complement, a chord or whatever. So yeah, no, that's my third choice.
I'm going to copy you because that's my third choice as well. I think it's a killer song. If they have a greatest hits package, I think everyone seems to go to this song out of all the songs on this album. It went top 5 in the UK, I think went number 7 in US. So it was the most commercially successful single off the album. Apparently they did over 100 takes of the song. And a lot of these sessions, Armando, has Keith Richards put it, marinating. They'd do 30 takes of the song and then, sort of drop it in and then do another 30 takes and see how the song evolves. There's lots of overdubs. It's probably why this album's got a kind of murky feel to it, which really suits the material. But I'm over 100 takes of the song. That's just phenomenal. I love the backup vocalists of Vanetta Fields and Clyde King. They add a lot of soul. It's probably one of Jagger's best vocals. I mean, I think Jagger's vocals across this album are sensational.
I would agree with you 100% on that. His vocal ability on this album is spot on all the way through.
And it's a great lyric of Jagger. It's about a gambler that couldn't be faithful to his wife. A simple tale, but just rock and roll 3-4 minute song. It's perfect. So I think it's one of their truly classic songs. And that's my number 3.
Yeah, I think that was a case of art imitating life, or in terms of not being able to be faithful. I mean, let's be real here.
There's a lot of things happening in that band in that time.
Oh yeah,
absolutely,
definitely. Moving on, not to get too much into that, the family show, folks. My next one, my number 4 is Shine a Light.
Lovely.
And it comes on, it's near the end of the album. I believe it's the second last track on the album. And it has again, as I said before, this album was basically a hodgepodge of musical styles. This has a very overtly gospel style to it. And I mean, it's dripping in gospel leanings. And I believe it features Billy Preston on organ. I know he was with them at this point in terms of the recording and their live performances. And I just think it's a beautiful track, and the arrangement on it, it's it's
sublime.
Yes. Yeah, sublime. Sorry, I'm trying to find words here. Sublime is a fantastic way to describe it. So yeah, that's my number 4.
Billy Preston just adds so much. Like even in talking about the Beatles with the Let It Be, just seeing that documentary, and when he came into the sessions, it was just sort of it lifts everything. And his work as a session muso just lifts every performance.
I find it, just quickly, I find it funny how, because I was watching the Beatles Let It Be documentary that came out, and I found it funny how they said that when he came into the sessions, because things were not going well during the sessions for Let It Be, But when he came in, they all sort of straightened themselves out and
Behaved.
they behaved. They didn't, stab each other in the back as much as they were before
Yep.
he arrived,
Mm.
And I mean, Billy Preston, he had the respect of the Stones. I mean, during their concerts, Jagger would go off stage for 2 or 3 songs that Preston would take lead on, and the Stones would back him up, as his backup band. So I mean, yeah, that's for someone to have the Stones backing you up. I mean, yes, he was well established at that point, but that still has to have give you a boost to your ego, in terms of having the Stones be your backup band on stage,
Yes. Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, I've got a few Billy Preston albums. I can't name the names of the albums, but they're really worth checking out. His discography is quite interesting, very soulful, and fantastic organ player.
Yeah,
one of the best.
No.
Really,
Actually,
really.
Yeah, no, I don't have any Billy Preston in my catalog, like in my collection. So I should maybe check some albums out. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, my next one, number 4, is a little bit of maybe a deep cut. I like Sweet Black Angel. I played that a fair amount during the week. It's got a ramshackle beauty about it. It was actually the B-side to Tumbling Dice. I would describe it as an acoustic country blues. It's about a civil rights activist. I think her name was Angela Davis. Jagger does beautiful harmonica work, and incidentally, Jagger's harmonica work on this album is just fantastic. I'm raving about Jagger's vocals and the different styles, but his harmonica playing is very underrated. Probably doesn't get enough kudos when you're reading about the Stones, and it's all over this track. But no, I really like Sweet Black Angel. Just the it's beautiful. It's ugly but beautiful. It's got that ramshackle beauty about it, and I love it. It's a nice deep track. So it's my number 4.
I was going to pick that actually, and it's got to be said too. I mean, I'll mention it again, but it's got to be said that a good amount of these songs, they may sound, there obviously there's like overdubs and layers of parts, but the recordings sound very sparse. It's they sound very simplistic, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that it may sound complex, but how can I put this? It is the complexity of the recordings, fine with all the overdubs and stuff, but they sound very simplistic, very simple, in its execution. So if that makes sense, I apologize.
It makes 100% sense. And they just don't make records like this anymore, Armando.
They don't.
It's a bygone age, and it's something that I really kind of get sad, and I miss this type of record, making.
I've said this on Sea of Tranquility quite a few times, that these days the art of the album is lost. Do you know what I mean? Like the art of going to the record store and buying an album or a CD and sitting and listening front to back and soaking it in, it's a lost art. It doesn't exist anymore.
I agree with you. And you can blame Spotify for that. I know we're transgressing a little bit, but I think a lot of people like grabs of tracks. Like my daughter just knows songs from bands because of Spotify. But I'm trying to encourage her with this stuff behind me in the albums. Listen to it from start to finish. And it's a great musical journey. Everything's about grabs, and that's really sad. And I think it's a lot to do with the way people listen to music through Spotify, unfortunately.
You see, if I was there at your place right now, I would be going through your albums and just sitting and looking at them, like pouring through them, just looking at the covers and looking at the lyrics, and everything today is a soundbite, and that's it's become detrimental to the music business, I think. But what do I know?
Absolutely.
What do I know? I'm just a music collector, you know.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. I mean, vinyl, there are pockets of popularity, and there are record shops in Sydney where there are turntables. And, you know, I spend every Saturday afternoon just going for a dig. And you do see people put the headphones on and listen to music. And, you know, there are people, and it's really the demographic seems to be older and younger, but there's a gap of like 20 years in between where they're not interested. So there is a vinyl revival and a love for the album as a medium,
yes.
but it seems to be the older generation, like 50 plus, and younger, 18 to 24.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are revisiting albums like what we're covering.
Yeah. And not to divert too much, but I would mention on another show that I can remember being the age of like 4 years old, and I have 3 older sisters. So music was always on in the house, AM radio, FM radio, records, 45s. I can remember being in the living room with my sister. She would have this, and she would have the stereo on, and the only light in the room was coming from the stereo. And I'd be lying there with her, and we'd just be listening to music.
Lovely.
You know, and the only light that would be in the room was coming from the stereo itself. One of those, you know, those old fashioned, you know, the slide ones, the console ones.
Yes.
Yeah, from the 70s.
Yes. The wooden cabinet.
Yes, yes. And the sliding
Flip
doors.
it open.
Yes, yes, yes.
And the record
exactly.
is, you stack the records and they come down. Terrible for the records. If you're an audiophile guy or hi-fi guy, they're terrible. But yes, I know what you're talking about.
To me, it was such a weird, like weird and wonderful feeling to be able to just lie there and just take in the music audibly. You know, music was not meant for video. Like it's not meant for visual. I'm sorry, it's meant for audible, for your auditory. You know, like system. So I mean, stuff like that is lost on today's generation, you know. And I'm only 52, like I'll be 52 this year, and it's a lost art. It's you know, but I digress, you know. So I mean, my next choice of the album is the second track, Rip This Joint. It's just a barn burner of a track, only like 2 to 3 minutes long. And there's a point on the track where you hear Jagger and his voice, he puts such power into his voice that it almost sounds like his voice is ripping apart. Like he just, like he's got control, but he screams so passionately into the mic that it literally feels like his throat is bleeding.
Yes.
That emotion into it.
Yep.
And this one track too is featured on the Alma Combo CD that came out a few months ago that I have, the live at the Alma Combo in Toronto.
Great.
CD. So people out there, you should check out that CD. It's fantastic. If you want a good snapshot of the Stones in an intimate live setting, the club only held like 300 people.
Yes.
So it was a very intimate. You could feel the sweat coming off the group during this recording of that album. But yeah, Rip This Joint is just a really good rocker, and fast paced, ass kicking. It's my fifth pick.
Great choice. Interesting you say about the playing smaller venues. I think they're one of those bands that can easily go from an arena to a small venue with aplomb. No issues. But there are some arena bands out there, I'm not mentioning any names, that would struggle because they're too far gone in the arena rock they would find it difficult to go into a club setting with no bells and whistles and strip it down to just the songs and just playing.
The only group that could probably do that these days are the Tea Party. Group from Canada, very big in Australia. I don't know if you.
Yeah, the guy lives out here, I think, the lead singer.
Jeff Martin.
Jeff Martin, yes.
Yeah, he lives in Australia. I think he has a studio in, I think it's Byron Bay.
Yes.
He has a production studio.
Yep.
Out there. And they're one of the few groups, and I've been touting the Tea Party on SOT and other shows for a while now, but they're one of the few groups. And they actually were to open for the Stones on one of their tours, but the show got canceled at the last minute. So the Tea Party ended up doing a very small gig at a place called the Reverb in Toronto on that one tour. But they're one of the few groups, along with the Stones, that could adapt to any size venue, any situation.
Yes.
And they always deliver. So.
Yes. Yeah, the Stones, I think one of the Australian tours, they played the Enmore Theatre in Sydney, which is a 2,000-seater. Tickets were impossible to get. They actually cordoned off the street that night when they played. And really? They were joined on stage by Malcolm and Angus from AC/DC.
AC/DC, yeah.
And played a couple of songs. And they did a lot of deep cuts. I would have just given my front teeth just to see that. That would have been fantastic.
That would have been good. That really would have been good. I mean, and not to belabor the point, but when there was a situation in Ontario, in Toronto with SARS, the Rolling Stones headlined a festival called SARS Gate or SARS Fest. SARS Fest, and it featured AC/DC, the Tea Party, Justin Timberlake of all people, other bands, and the Rolling Stones headlined the night. So at one point you had everyone, like other groups, but also the Stones along with AC/DC and the Tea Party, all sharing the stage at the finale for this one huge fundraiser, because people were freaking out over SARS and this virus that was out, and not wanting to come to Toronto, and tourism was extremely down. So they got together and they did this benefit. So
the
Stones love Toronto. So
yes. Oh, that sounds excellent. All right. Well, my number 5 is Loving Cup. So this was originally recorded around the Let It Bleed sessions. I think it's got that southern rock feel. It's soulful. Nicky Hopkins' piano line. I mean, I'd love to hear just Nicky Hopkins' piano line isolated all the way through this album, because he's just ripping it. It's absolutely sensational. Bobby Keys does the sax, that Stax type horns comes in. This was in the one of the highlights of that Shine a Light movie, where Jack White was singing with Jagger. Jagger never really wanted to play this song. He said, "Who would know it?" But it has absolutely grown in stature, and it's a regular track on their tours. So that's my number 5. I really like it. It's got that southern rock feel.
Yeah, more on that later, actually.
Okay, thank you.
My next one, number 6, is Shake Your Hips. It's for all the reasons you mentioned. It just has that boogie feeling to it. Just boogie woogie track, and it never really gets going. It does remind me of Lagrange from and that's all there is for percussion in terms of a back-end track. You think it's gonna you do think it's gonna kick into a full-fledged group outing, and just into a full-fledged song, but it doesn't. It sort of reins in, and it has like that again, the boogie feeling. And yeah, I was trying to think of what song it reminded me of, and I'm thinking, yeah, ZZ Top's got a, yeah, Lagrange. That's it. That's got to be it. And I
Yes.
mean, obviously they were an inspiration for ZZ Top. I mean, this came out in 72. Lagrange came out, I believe it was 76, 77 at this point. So yeah, it's just it's a great boogie track.
Oh, it's
Woogie
a
track.
killer song.
Yeah.
Killer song. Yeah, Charlie Watts' drumming all the way through is really just solid. And
Yeah.
when you see him live, he hits those drums hard. He has a very specific, a smaller kit. So it's not heavy metal, it's not a big kit, but what he does, he's one of the hardest hitting drummers I've actually heard live.
Yeah,
And
I think
that is a big loss. I was very sad when I heard his passing, because he is the backbone to the Stones.
mhm.
And and when you see them live or hear them live, you understand.
Yeah, you do. I think he's an underrated drummer. I don't think he got his full props when he was with the Stones.
Yeah.
And he's very quiet, like because I mean, you had Mick Jagger, you had Keith Richards up
Ronnie
front,
Wood, Ronnie Wood's
Ron Wood,
personality in himself. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, you had the Glimmer Twins up front, right?
Yeah.
Jagger and Richards, and so I mean, they basically, not meaning to, but like they overshadowed. They were the face of the Stones, right?
Yeah.
And you had like Bill Wyman and Charlie Watts in the background, holding down the rhythm section. So I mean, yeah, he is a fantastic drummer.
Yeah.
He really
Yeah.
is. Okay, yeah. So was that my go or your go?
No, my go. So, well, no, that's a great track. Good choice. My next one is Happy. I love Keith's songs. I love the Keith solo songs. And when I saw them live, he's he does this little solo spot where he does a run of 2 or 3 songs, and they always do it. He said, "I do it just to give Mick a rest," because you've seen them 3 times. You know that Mick is like a power bunny.
Oh,
He's
he's
jumping
all over the
around. He's like the
stage.
ever-ready bunny, and he's just jumping around the audience. And for a guy
Yeah,
of his age, he's just got more energy than me. But
yeah.
he's absolutely sensational. But getting back to this song, I like it. It's a little jangly. It's loose. I love the lyric. I need a love that keeps me happy. It's simple. I love his well-worn voice, that gravelly,
Whiskey George Thomas, Whiskey George
Scotch.
voice.
I call it a Scotch and cigarette voice.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very much so.
And how this came about was he woke up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or it might have been early morning. I'm not sure the story. He had an idea. He roused what musicians were with him or up, because a lot of the sessions were done really late at night in the basement. And you got Jimmy Miller, who played
Yeah.
drums, who's the producer, Bobby Keys on sax, and they just laid it down on one track. And they played the track to Charlie Watts, and they said, "Well, Charlie, do you want to do the overdubs?" And he goes, "No, leave it. Perfect. I'm not going to do it." So it's actually Jimmy Miller's drumming on that track, and that's I like it. Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite Keith songs ever. And that's one that always seems to get played when they do their song set where it goes to the key spot. So Happy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, it's a good song. I mean, it stands out too because it's the only track on the album with him on lead vocals, right? I mean, the rest are all Jagger. So
yeah, and it was released as a single too. I think it charted, got to number 20. So that's not too shabby.
Yeah, I think it was the second single. They were for an album of 18 tracks. There were only 2 singles released from the album. Which I don't understand. But yeah, no, it's a good song. It's a good song. My next one, number 7, is Loving Cup.
Great.
And it kind of reminds me of You Can't Always Get What You Want. slightly, not anything to do with the arrangement, but in terms of the vocal, it's a beautiful song. It's a very emotional song.
Yeah.
To me. And he's sort of, Jagger's sort of pouring his heart and soul into it in terms of his vocal delivery. So yeah, I like that track.
No, that's killer. If I had to be pushed and my top 3 songs on the album, because we're not ranking it, I'd put that as one of my top 3 songs in the album.
Yeah.
And you know how you said it's emotional. I get that completely, because there's a build up. There's emotion, and you can see that they're really just putting their heart and soul in this track. No.
Yeah, very much so.
No, that's a great one. I'm gonna go Ventilator Blues. This is another deep track, and Mick Taylor gets a very rare writing credit. I love Mick Taylor. He was probably the best guitarist in the Stones. I know, look, you Brian Jones fans will come out and Ronnie Wood, but sorry, Mick Taylor for me. And when I saw the tour, the 40 Licks tour in Sydney, I'm not sure if it was the 40 Licks, but their last tour, what they did, Mick Taylor came on and did a special spot, and it was quite emotional. And yeah, his playing is just sublime. No, I think he was
underrated.
Absolutely. He was very quiet, assuming. It wasn't like a flashy, most when you think lead guitarist, you think of flash. You're a Jimmy Page or a Richie Blackmore, you're out there, or a showman, but he was always very kind of quiet and probably socially seemed a bit awkward in the realm of the Stones when you're putting him against the mirror, the Glimmer twins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this. Again, you got Jagger doing a very stylized, sneering vocal against a blue riff. And to me, it's a bit of a cross between a Muddy Waters or a Howling Wolf. And this album is just, as I said earlier, it's like the history of American music, country, gospel, blues.
Yeah, there are a lot of different genres on the album. And I think it's for that reason. I mean, there's a documentary on the making of this album that it came out like 2011, I believe it was, or 12. It must have been 12. And Mick Jagger has been quoted as saying he really doesn't think much of this album at all, because of the varying styles of music. Like, there's no cohesiveness to it. That there's not one thread that pulls it together. He thinks, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I remember before I bought this album, before before you even contacted me at all.
Yeah.
And I asked online about whether, if it was a good album or not. And that, the responses I got were like, oh my God, I don't believe that you don't have this album. Like, where have you been? Like, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with me. I wanted to know, like, is this an album to buy, or
absolutely? And
did I pass it by? I mean,
there's a lot of classic albums that I've really caught on late, and there's no harm, there's no timing like now just to listen to this stuff. So, but yeah,
no, I do like it for its variety.
Oh yeah,
that's what pulls me in. That's what pulled me into it, like getting to know more and wanting to explore more on it. So yeah, it's kind of funny because you hear these groups, these bands, like, they release an album, and at the time of release, they're like, oh, this is the best work we've ever done. This represents us to the max, etc. And then like a year or two later, and they're like, well, it's not very good.
Well, it's all PR, isn't it? They're not going to shit on their record at the time that it comes out.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I mean, Aerosmith comes to mind when we talk about this, when they released Just Push Play, which I liked it. I liked it as an album. And they're all sitting saying, Joe Perry is just saying, this album best represents us as a group. There's no filters. There's no other producers around saying, telling us how to play. Yeah. And then like 5 years later, that album is nothing like we are. Like it doesn't represent us at all. Like how can you go from one extreme to the other? Like such different extremes. I don't get that. But.
Well, there's two diversions on this. There are some artists where their most popular, lauded song is the song they hate. And I know there are plenty of artists where, there's a song that I love and they grudgingly have to play it because they will get run out of town if they don't play it.
That's exactly it.
And maybe this album goes into that category. This album didn't sell gangbusters. It went to number one. But if you look at it, the certification, it didn't sell as much as, say, Some Girls or Tattoo You. It wasn't like a blockbuster. I think it did 1 or 2 mil. But for a Stones double album, and thinking that it's been so critically lauded, it didn't go gangbusters.
I think it was one of those sleeper hits where it was a steady seller.
Yes.
I mean, you think about it. I mean, my brother-in-law has said that that there were groups in the 70s where you would go out and buy, say you go out to go buy albums, and you'd say you buy like 2 or 3 of, you buy a Supertramp or you buy a Pink Floyd, and then you buy you'd buy this album, like you'd buy the Rolling Stones, right? They were only, so there are certain groups like Queen or that they may not be your first choice, but they would be maybe your second or third choice to buy.
Yep.
So this group falls into it, right? I mean,
yes, absolutely. And I think maybe because there's only 1 or 2 tracks that ever make a greatest hits compilation, that may be the thing. But I got into this album because in the 80s, I bought a Rolling Stone magazine, as you did. You didn't know any better. I used to buy Rolling Stones, and they did their usual annual 100 greatest albums of all time. Yeah. And this was in top 10. I think it was number 6. Yeah. It was number 6. So it was the highest ranked Rolling Stones. And I thought, I'm going to check this out. And when I got the CD and played it, I didn't like it because it sounded so unlike a Rolling Stones album, dark, murky. But it's only over time that I've realized it's a masterpiece. It's wonderful. So it rewards you, and it does pay back, but you've got to invest time emotionally to get it.
There's nuggets of gold there. You just have to be able to. Again, it goes back to being to wanting to listen to an album. You have to want to listen to this and get into it. And that goes for any album, but especially for this one, there are nuggets of gold in it, definitely. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, my next one is All Down the Line. For me, just an all-out rocker, and it's on the 4th side of the album, and it's just a beautiful delivery from Jagger, and what else can I say? It was also featured on the Alma Combo live album. So there's a lot of punch on that album too.
I'm going to check it out. Yeah,
I think you should. Yeah. So that's my number 8.
Yeah. That's a great choice. Look, I'm going to go number 8 with the same one. I think it's a classic straight 4 on the floor. Kathy McDonald, great backing vocals, adds a lot of soul to it. If you look at who played on that song, it was basically everyone. It was an all-star cast, so they had people coming in and out. But that basically had everybody on it. great guitar work with Mick Taylor again, and some really nice slide guitar. So I haven't got much more to add. You've summed it up perfectly. That's my number 8.
Okay.
And that song's in my head at the moment. I can hear it. You know how you get songs in your head
all the time.
And just 2 songs ago, I had that in my head. So there you go.
Yeah, I know. No, and it takes days for it to leave my head. Like it's like, okay,
yeah,
enough.
I've got that chorus of all down the line.
yeah. All down the line. Yeah. It's like, okay, enough. So my number 9 is Casino Boogie.
Okay.
And again, it's just a very laid back track, just a very swing track, like boogie woogie kind of almost.
Yep.
Very slow boogie woogie track. And I don't know who sings with Jagger on the vocal though. It's him or if he double tracked himself.
I think he double tracks. I think he does.
Okay, so he did.
Our viewers can correct us, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. If anyone out there knows, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a slinky, sexy track, right? That it sort of carries the album along, and I mean, this is where the variety comes in, right? Because I mean, on that same side, you had again, it starts off with Rocks Off, and it's sandwiched between Casino Boogie is sandwiched between Rocks Off and Tumbling Dice. So I think it's like track 3. So yeah, it's just a good slice of boogie woogie sensuality, I call it.
So. Yeah, bit of 50s too. You got a bit of a 50s throwback. They're going back to the classic age of rock and roll. So yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, nice.
Nice.
I don't think we can go wrong with this album because we're just selecting, but every track I really like. It's pretty flawless album. My number 9 is Sweet Virginia. So there's an Australian, maybe an English slang saying called piss take. When you're taking the piss, means like you may be parodying or mocking.
Yeah.
And there's a fine line in this song whether you think, are they actually really into the country side of it, or is it like a parody? And I think it's on the right side. I think they are sincerely putting their cowboy boots on and the hat and paying homage to American country music. It's got a wonderful harmonica. Again, Graham Parsons was the inspiration and the muse for this. And I just love that lyric about, do you wipe the shit off your shoes? I think it's just so raw and a bit vulgar, but I love it. It's just...
just wipe the shit off your shoes. Yeah, it's just, when I heard that, I'm like, did he just say when?
Yeah, I had a laugh when I heard that the first time.
It's like, did you really? Yeah, he did. Okay, so
so it's not a piss take. I think it's a genuine homage to country music, and I like it a lot.
I think on that track too, they wear their influences on their sleeve.
Yes,
like it's brazen. It's right out there.
Yeah,
and they're unapologetic about it completely.
Yep.
Good choice. My 10th selection is I Just Want to See His Face.
Nice.
And for me, out of all of the variety that's on the album, this has got to be one of the tracks that stands out for me in terms of its eclecticness. The arrangement of it, just very minimal vocals, just the arrangement of the track. I believe that this is another one that Mick Taylor helped right? I believe. I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
gotta check my notes again. But yeah, it's a very beautiful arranged track, very different from again the other variety that's already there. This just stands out even more to me.
Yeah.
This piece. And it's again, I believe it's only like what 3 minutes long. It's not very long.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
So yeah,
Lovely.
that's my last one.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of on my bubbling under, but I find it quite gospel. And
Yeah.
Jagger was visiting a lot of the those sort of congregational churches and getting inspiration with a lot of the sort of the gospel music and the choirs.
Mhm.
And he took that influence and just filter it into this song. I think
Mhm.
it's a lovely song. It's got a nice feel to it. Yeah, great,
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
My final pick is Shine a Light. So it's the second last song on the album. I think it should have been the album closer because it's just emotionally, it's the crescendo
Yeah.
of this album.
Yeah.
I
If
think
they
it
had,
ties up everything.
yeah, it's a good bookend to it. If they
I
had
would have
switched
swapped Soul Survivor
Soul
as
Survivor,
the
that's right.
second last and put Shine a Light as the last because I think that would have made a better closer. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just sublime blues gospel. Again, he's picking up that sort of church choir feel. The backup singers of Vanetta Fields and Clyde King. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I agree. I mean, if they would have swapped the last two tracks, like Soul Survivor and Shine Light being the last track, I think it would have tied up the album very nicely.
Damn it, it's in my head now.
Oh Lord, I could, yeah. Well, it happens. I mean, if you look at the album, like if you look at Rocks Off, that starts the album.
Now it's
I
in my
mean,
head now.
what is he talking about on that track?
Mm,
You know, I had sex last night with a dancer friend of mine. It's like, so he's talking about debauchery,
yep.
right, to an extent. And then shine a light, he's like, you know, may the good Lord shine a light on you. You know what I mean? It's like, so
Mm,
he's sort of looking for
redemption.
redemption and salvation,
Lord, I have
right?
sinned. It's sort of
Haven't we all? I mean
yeah.
to an extent, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it would have been a good way to end the album, to bring it to a close, right?
Yeah.
Because you go through all these emotions, and then you come out the other side at the end of it thinking, I've learned something from this, and there's hope in
Mm,
that respect. So yeah, I think you're right. I think if they would have switched those two around, it would have been better. But
no, great. No. Well, that's been good, Armando. I think that with our 10, we've sort of we've doubled up on quite a few of them.
yeah.
But it's a great album. One thing I want to put a kudos out is I love the album cover. It's sort of all
Mhm.
this, and it really sort of encapsulates the what this album sounds like: murky, grungy, um, a lot of variety. So, all these sort of black and white
Yeah,
photos. No, I
yeah.
love it.
And it also the cover itself it's kind of saying, you know, asking the question, what are we up to? Well, take a listen and find out
Yep,
through the pictures, right? That's what it's basically saying. Because
yep,
you can't really tell anything just by looking at the photos, but it draws you in, right?
yep,
It intrigues you enough to want to listen to the album.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
I think it's a 5-star album, and in my opinion, they only probably pulled out one more 5-star album, which may or may not be debated, and that's probably Some Girls in '78. Um, I think that after this album, they were, had put some very good albums, but none were as great as that album. That is probably their peak. If you had to pick one Rolling Stones album to a desert island, that this is the best album, and I'm not talking a greatest hits, I would probably choose Exile on Main Street.
See, I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to do a two-way tie.
That's okay.
I would take this album. I would take Exile, and I would take Sticky Fingers.
Yes.
Because I was listening to Sticky Fingers and then and Ghost Head Soup. So I wanted to get listen to the two albums that preceded this. So it's like to see where would this lie in that that list. And this and Sticky Fingers, to me, they're I gotta tell you, not really knowing the tracks. No, I mean, obviously, you hear Tumbling Dice, everyone knows Tumbling Dice, but to hear the other songs, the other 17 tracks on here, and to understand where they were coming from. Some would say experimentation, some would say, a drug stupor in terms of like what they were up to, no names, Keith Richards. But I mean, you understand fully what they were trying to achieve, right? They were trying to achieve variety in what they were doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this on YouTube or heard this, but there's a John Lennon recording on YouTube, an interview where he is just blasting the Stones, that they were shit, that they copied. He said everything the Beatles did, everything the Stones did, the Beatles did first. He says all they were doing was copying us, and I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, holy shit, like he is upset. Like he is ripping them apart. But I mean, to me, there's nothing wrong with going with your influences and just taking it to another level.
Yeah, well, look at Led Zeppelin. Hello, Muddy Waters. Hello, Howling Wolf. All those
Hello,
half their riffs are recycled.
Hello, Willie Dixon. I mean,
oh yeah.
People are saying, I mean, and I love me some Led Zeppelin. I love Led Zeppelin, but I mean, Willie Dixon sued them for Whole Lotta Love.
Yeah.
And he won. And if you look at the pressings for Led Zeppelin 2 from like 1988 on, Willie Dixon is listed as a songwriter on Whole Lotta Love.
Yep.
So it's like, every one of these bands, or a good amount of them, cherry picked influences from all of their heroes or people they liked, and just twisted them and tweaked them a little bit and just used them.
Absolutely.
Some more blatant than others, but I mean, every generation is influenced by the generation before. Do you know what I mean? And not to go on a preaching rant, but and I apologize if I did. I'm sorry.
No,
you won't have me on after this episode, guys. I'm telling you.
No. Well, that was great, Armando. I really like, and we're going to do this again. So please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Tell us your comments. Check out Armando on Sea of Tranquility. He's must-see TV. I always love the spots that you do with Pete and the rest of the crew. And I guess we'll do this really soon. Catch you later. See ya.